You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, good to be back with you again for another Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. And as I close in on my 70th birthday this year, we're speaking to somebody today who hiked the AT in 1994, 20 years before I did. It seemed like such a different time then, and when you see some of his photos he sent me, you're going to know what I mean. His name is Will Henry, or Teaberry, and you'll hear about not only his 1994 hike, but his subsequent friendship with Bill Irwin, the famous blind hiker who thru-hiked a couple of years earlier. And you really get this impression of Bill Irwin that only somebody who knew him could know. I thought this was a fascinating conversation, and we're going to be hearing from Will soon. Also today, we wrap up introductions to our class of 2022 with our 10th and final member, Dan Whitesides, or Trumpet. Trumpet is a pretty confident guy, and he's going on the trail this year with his dog, Frankie. Frankie sounds quite a companion, and I'm sure he'll be popular out there this year. Trumpet will be on after Will. Then, for a few minutes, I'll be speaking with a previous guest, Chris Casado, who runs the TSX Challenge that I'll be undertaking later this year. The reason I've got Chris back is that he has an interesting project he's introducing this year, and I thought it was worth getting him on to tell you about it. Finally, we have a Class of 2022 update, this time by Dom Tammaro. Dom is part of the faculty at Brown, where a previous Mighty Blue Show alum is in her second year. Jess Jordan, or Yalla, has been talking with Dom about his upcoming hike. And as you'll hear, he is wildly excited about his approaching first day. So let's get on and meet Will Henry, or Teaberry. So today's guest is another of those who hiked the Appalachian Trail in the last century, which is amazing. This is Will Henry, or Teaberry. Hey, Will, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? I'm
good, thank you. Now, your story is about quite a lot more than your thru-hike in 1994, but we're going to talk about that later. Let's start back in 1994. What made you want to hike the AT in the first place?
You know, growing up, I grew up in Damascus, Virginia, and in small town, but saw a lot of hikers coming through. And as a young boy in my elementary school years, a lot of people were doing section hiking and a lot of through hikers. Damascus didn't have a lot of things that hikers needed, so they would hitchhike from Abingdon, or from Damascus into Abingdon, and we lived about halfway between the two towns. So my dad actually section hiked half the Appalachian Trail, the southern part, but he would be able to pick up the hikers that were hitchhiking, kind of knowing what gear that they had and whether they were for real or not. So I kind of grew up with a lot of times when we were headed back and forth to town, we would have hikers, and sometimes Dad would have them stay the night. So as a young boy, I thought, man, through hikers are the coolest people ever. They can eat anything they want, and they never have to take a shower. So, but as I got older, you know, seeing the hikers coming through and kind of, you know, being able to realize, like, wow, what these people are actually doing, it was definitely something that I wanted to do, and my parents were very supportive. My older brother had taken some time off after he graduated from college and worked on a ranch out in Texas, and it was literally when he came back and from that trip and telling me stories, and he said, hey, you know, I'm sure Mom and Dad are going to do the same thing for you, give you some time off, and you should pick something that you really want to do. And it was pretty much at that moment that I thought, you know what, I'm going to hike the trail.
Wow! So your brother was the catalyst for this trip. But take me back again then. So that's interesting. When you were young, the the 80 went through Damascus, but they didn't have the facilities they have now. Tell us, so what was Damascus like in those days?
Oh, wow. Damascus has changed a lot over the years. It's well known as a trail town now, but growing up, it didn't really offer a lot. I mean, most people drove through Damascus, but Damascus was never a tourist, town. I mean, it was small town America, and just didn't have a lot of the things. I mean, they had a little grocery store, of course, and the hostel there in Damascus, was open, but not near the traffic. And of course, I remember riding horses on the Virginia Creeper Trail,
Right.
and thinking, hey, if more people don't start using this, we won't be able to ride it anymore. It'll grow up.
Wow.
And that was, now it's one of the more popular bike paths, and I can't imagine riding horses on it now.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you got this little town in Damascus, and you grew up there, so real small town America. So the thought of going out into the woods and doing, I mean, I suppose as a youngster, you probably went in the woods because there are woods all around you, aren't they?
Yes, sir.
So you were an adventurous guy, I guess, because in the way kids are, and running around the woods and so on. So the idea of going on the trail was appealing to you. And at that time in '94, you were still at college, or you were just about to finish college?
I graduated, so I went to Lincoln Memorial University in Harrogate, Tennessee, and I graduated May the 8th, 1994, and then started my thru-hike May the 18th.
Man, you were all in, weren't you?
So,
oh my
yes.
gosh, just 10 days. So the idea was to get on the trail. So I presume once you'd graduated, how did you plan for this trip then? Because 10 days is not a long amount of preparation. I presume you were preparing before, weren't you?
Oh, yes, definitely. I knew about a year ahead of time that I was going to have this opportunity. So I probably spent more time reading about the Appalachian Trail than I did studying what I graduated with in school. But yeah, I knew a year ahead of time. So I actually spent that spring break of '94. I actually did the Smokies section.
Oh yeah, what was that like? Did you?
It was tough,
I was about to say, Smokies is not the easiest part of the trail, is it, at all?
Yeah. Well, the original plan, I thought, I'll hike the Smokies section and kind of a shakedown to make sure that I have all my gear. I actually started my thru hike with a dog, but I knew that I couldn't take the dog through the Smokies. So the thought was, hey, I'll do the Smokies section as a shakedown without my dog, and then I'll kind of run into some thru hikers that are headed north and talk to them about their gear, what's working, what's not working, get to meet some thru hikers along the way. So yeah, it was a great experience. It was tough. No doubt about it. Probably not the easiest place to start.
Yeah, I would think it's tough.
But,
yeah. What do you think you learned from that experience? Because that's about a 5 or 6 day hike, isn't it, altogether?
Yes. So I learned, of course, I was very watchful of how other folks were getting their stuff together. I learned pretty quickly that the more organized people were, that the easier they could get on the trail in the morning. And I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time. Even though it was chilly a few nights, we didn't get into the snow or anything like that, like some of the thru hikers do. But I learned that, hey, if I can get going in the morning and get my miles in, I don't really need, I didn't drink coffee back then. I didn't need a warm breakfast. So yeah, I think just watching what the thru hikers were doing and the gear that they were using and kind of time management was a big thing. I didn't want to be one of those people that came in at 11 or 12 at night and still had to cook supper and do all that.
Setting your tent up in the dark sucks.
Exactly.
In a big way. So what is it? We're going to talk about where you started in a minute, but what was the weight of your pack? Because that was well before ultralight, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. I had a Gregory Rainier pack. I think it was I don't remember, but I remember starting out in the 100 Mile Wilderness. Of course, that was after I hiked Mount Katahdin, and my
Yeah.
parents dropped me off for the last time. I want to say that I started out with like 11 or 12 days food. So that was and I had warm
Wow.
weather or
Wow.
cold weather gear with me. So I started off, I think, with everything, water, all my food, warm weather gear. Cause up in Maine, believe it or not, when I climbed Mount Katahdin, there was snow on the mountain. It
I've
was,
seen I got to tell everybody, Will sent me these photographs, and they're not great quality because they're actually photograph of a photograph, and you can see the flash going off. They're going to be in the show notes because they are amazing. Your Katahdin picture is extraordinary, isn't it? So you climbed it in snow. That alone must have been terrifying because going up there, that first, once you get above tree line, that is pretty darn vertical from there, isn't it?
Yes, going back, if somebody told me that I had to hike it under those conditions, at this point, I would be scared to death. But back then, I don't even remember. It was just one more thing that I needed to do before I could send my parents back. They drove me up there, and I was so worried about having everything I needed that, when it came the day to climb Mount Katahdin, they hiked up part of the way with me.
Nice.
Um, it was literally just, okay, I got to get up there. I got to document and I got to take a picture. Of course, back in those days, I'm sure it's changed a lot now, but the park was closed, which,
Yes.
when we drove up there, when we left Damascus, it was, I left right after the hiker parade and it was hot, and I get up to Maine to start my through hike, and they're saying that the mountains closed, the park's closed because of snow, which really meant that, they have a wooden gate that has a pin in it, and they're just not responsible for you if you get in there and get over your head or skill level. And so, I mean, I should have waited it out, but back then it was a different world, and I was a lot younger. I was 22 years old,
Yeah,
and
22 year olds couldn't give a crap. Yeah, of course you. Why would you? Quite right too. Yeah.
exactly. I've made some stupid mistakes in my life, but fortunately, I was able to get up there and stay safe doing it. It terrifies me now to think I've been back to Katahdin on a pretty day, and now that I realize what was just past that sign with a knife's
Yes.
edge and all that, it makes me even more fearful of, like, what was I thinking that I could do? I didn't have any ropes. I did have a day pack with me, but probably not near enough to stay warm if something would have happened and I couldn't have gotten back to
Yeah.
my folks.
Now, as you said, you started at Katahdin. Your approach trail, I always say this, your approach trail was climbing Katahdin, which just drives me crazy, that sort of
right.
thing. But you chose to go Sobo. Was that because you were starting in May? You didn't think you'd make it by going northbound?
I did. Everyone gave me advice, and they said, this is not a race. Like, you will regret if you try to make it a race. So right off the bat, I thought, well, I don't graduate until May. Most people are starting in Georgia in March or April and
Yeah.
kind of hitting spring. So if I can start in Mount Katahdin, I can work my way south and not have it. I wanted to be home by Thanksgiving, and I actually got finished at Springer Mountain November the 18th. So, I
Right.
had plenty of time. I took 10 days off when I got to Damascus and was, hanging out with everyone. It's funny that I didn't get sick on the trail at all until after I had been home and was, I went to church and was shaking everyone's hand around people and lots of people, and went to the National Storytelling Festival with my mom and crowds of people. But when I got back on the trail was the only time I ever got sick, and I think maybe I hadn't been around a lot of people. I don't know, but I got pretty bad cold sinus infection,
Wow.
yeah, I think what they say is you catch colds from people and not necessarily the environment.
That's
So
right. Yeah, I'm sure you do. That's where the viruses move around, isn't it, within people.
right.
So Maine in May, I think most of us know Maine in May is going to be pretty snowy quite a lot of the time. Was it snowy throughout Maine for you, or was it just at that higher elevation?
It was just pretty much every mountain you went over. There were, anywhere from 2 to 3 foot snow drifts, and snow on the mountain. Of course, Mount Katahdin, I mean, the snow was all the way up to the signs.
That
So
picture
there
was
was,
awesome.
yeah, but I didn't have snow down on, the flat areas and
Right.
and the lakes were not frozen over, of course. And in
Sure.
fact, one of the things that I always remember is my parents had planned to hike to the top with me. They weren't able to, but as we were, I hiked Todd, and then the next day we kind of rested and drove around, and so we were able to get a small little plane, pontoon plane, and they had just been able to open up because of the ice was off the lakes and
Wow.
ponds, and so they took my parents and I out on the little plane and actually showed us where the AT went through. The guy was very knowledgeable of the AT and kind of pointed out some places along the way and got as close to Katahdin as he could. I mean, the plane was just like shaking and he was like, I don't think we need to get any closer. And all of us were like, oh no, we're close enough. It was a bumpy ride, but that was kind of cool with my parents to be able to see, as he flew around the Katahdin.
That's magnificent.
Nice.
They were able to see what you'd done or what you're doing. That's tremendous.
Right.
So, how was the 100-mile wilderness? Quite apart from you taking about 10 or 12 days worth of food, what was it like to go through the 100-mile wilderness? Because it was a wilderness for you. Because I'd imagine there weren't that many people going there, were there?
No, I think there were 7 days that where I didn't see or hear anyone. It was my dog and I hiking, and I didn't see a plane fly over, nothing.
Oh
And I'm thinking, where can you go and still be in the United States unless you lock yourself in a closet or something where you can move every day and still not see or hear anyone. And I remember that the morning of the 8th day, I hadn't seen or heard anyone, and I hear these voices. When you're hiking, sometimes you can hear things a long time before you get them, and I was like, oh, who, okay, there's people talking, and it was actually two guys section hiking. They were headed north. I was headed south, and I remember taking off my pack and sitting it right in the middle of the trail. And I was thinking, they're going to talk to me. I don't care who they are. I'm going to talk to these folks. And they were very nice and wanted to know all about my trip so far. And
so, but was the solitude bothering you then, Will? Because and
I would
8
say
days is a long time. Yeah, it's a long time.
I would say that I hadn't planned on it. I guess I knew that going southbound I wouldn't have near the folks on the trail, but I actually never really thought before my trip that I would go long periods without seeing anyone. Of course, there weren't a lot of people that went southbound. I think the numbers that they give at the end of the year, I think 200 and some people may have started southbound that year or told the ATC that they were going to do a southbound hike. And I think that there were 20 some of us that actually finished that year. So, there were, believe it or not, there was a handful of people in front of me, and several of them dropped out. But, I could read their registers and, they had hiked Katahdin a day or two before I did, and in just as bad, if not worse, conditions. And then, along the way, I hiked with some folks. There was actually a foreign exchange student from Germany that he wanted to do something. He was going to Rutgers University, and he wanted to take some time off, so he took a month off, and he hiked southbound. We hiked together from Monson, Maine, into the Whites. It was good. I had gone this 100-mile wilderness without anyone, and then we met up in Monson, so we hiked together, and we were friends and stayed in touch for many, many, many years. We've kind of lost contact as we've moved around, I'm sure. But yeah, it was a lonely experience.
Do you regret the more solitary parts of your hike then? Would you say that you would have preferred to share the experience with more people?
Wow, I enjoyed the folks that I hiked with. There was three people around New York and New Jersey, southbounders that we hiked together with, and then there was two through hikers that caught up with me right before I finished at Springer. They had been reading my trail journals since I started, and of course we had never met. I never knew they existed, but I do. I don't think I would like the big crowds where you're kind of fighting for a space in the shelter.
Sure.
I did really enjoy meeting all the northbounders when they came
that's
through.
A cool thing for Sobos. They could be all the northbounders coming through. That must be fun.
Exactly. But, I didn't really, we met at a shelter or on the trail, which on the trail it was a very brief encounter. Overnight in a shelter, you got to know folks. But, it's, I would say somewhere in the middle is ideal. Like, I don't know that I would want the huge crowds, that sometimes the northbounders, the bubble that comes up, but it would have been nice to hike a little bit with other people.
Would you say that you had fun? Was it fun?
Yeah. We all know, it's the toughest thing you'll probably ever do, but I was given good advice that to expect it to be tough and to expect the actual hiking part to turn into a job, basically. And they said, if you're expecting kind of the backpacker magazine view of this, everybody's clean, everybody's got great gear, all this, that, but I was told that 1 out of every 5 days was going to be good weather. It was either going to be too hot, too cold, too dry, or too wet. And then you'd have a really nice day. And so in my mind, because I was given that advice, I was expecting it to be tough, and it was. It was the toughest thing I've ever done. But I did also enjoy it as well.
But you say about being filthy and hikers being dirty. It takes me back. I went to trail days in 2016, I think it was, or 2017, something like that, and I remember thinking, looking at the hikers, through hikers that year, of course I wasn't hiking that year, thinking, oh my God, they are filthy. And of course I'd come through in 2014 as filthy, and I came a couple of years later as a through hiker as well in 2019, and I was just as filthy. I don't think you realise how filthy you get when you're being filthy, do you?
Right. No.
So when you actually see them, you saw these hikers coming through, you saw how dirty they were.
Exactly.
Oh, it's funny.
Right.
And tell us about you and O.J. Simpson.
So, 94 was, of course, didn't have cell phones, didn't have social media, didn't have pickups at the road crossings for hostiles that wanted your business. Literally the world was a lot different. So reading the trail registers, especially when you were going south, you heard all the northbounders would talk about the places that they stayed in town and the best places, and that's where I tried to stay as well. But
Sure.
It was also kind of our source of news. And I remember for 2 or 3 days in a row before I got into town, I started seeing remarks that, I admit it, I did it, OJ. And I was thinking, is OJ like a through hiker? I haven't heard that name, and so I kept just hearing things things about OJ. And it wasn't until I got into that next town that I was like, oh my gosh, this like 4 hour, police chase with the white Bronco and OJ and all this stuff. So the big joke was that when all this came to trial, that we would actually, the jury for OJ would be nothing but through hikers, because we were the only people in America that probably didn't see that live and make some sort of a decision on it. So, but yeah, it was that was the big year of the OJ Simpson.
Oh dear. Now I know before I know you finished at Springer, and that's fantastic. To do a journey like that is an amazing achievement for anybody to have done. So congratulations on that. But I know around this time, and either side of beginning of your hike and ending your hike, you got to know Bill Irwin, didn't you? The blind guy who hiked. So tell us how you first got to meet Bill or speak to Bill Irwin.
Okay. So yeah, a girlfriend at the time had given me Bill Irwin's book, Blind Courage, and I read it. I read a lot of books trying to prepare and find out, but I was interested in his story, read the book, and back in those days, I had joined ALTA, the Long Distance Hikers Association. Sure. Once a year, they sent out a directory. So I'm flipping through the directory, looking at trail names and things like that. This is, of course, before my hike, and I see Bill Irwin's name in there, and I was like, wow, he lives in Burlington, North Carolina. Here's his phone number. So, I'm a college student, and I remember being in college on the payphone, calling card, and I was like, I'm going to call this guy up and ask him about the trail, and so I call him up, and of course, he had hiked in 90 and I hiked in 94. So at that point, Bill was doing a lot of public speaking, doing a lot of traveling. He had a road manager, and turns out the road manager is the one that picked up the phone, and he was kind of giving me the runaround, because little did I know that not everybody just got to call up and talk to Bill Irwin.
You're a 22-year-old kid. Why would you know that?
Yeah. So, but as soon as I told him my story, that I was getting ready to start my through hike, I had some questions for him. He said, yeah, if you're gonna through hike, Bill's sitting right here. He gave the phone to Bill, and I talked to Bill in the hall room of my college dorm for like 45 minutes.
Awesome?
And we became friends. I didn't meet Bill, face to face until after the hike, but we corresponded by phone, and then I gave him updates along the way. And then after the hike, we actually met. I got to hike with he and Orient, and Bill is a significant person in my life, because he kind of changed the direction. So
yeah, we're going to come to that in a minute, actually. And I don't want to get ahead of myself with this. I want to go back to him. What did he see in you, a 22-year-old kid who didn't know his arse from his elbow, as we say in the UK, and yet he spent that time? And I think that's a really good thing for people to realise. When you've done this hike and people want to talk about this hike, you want to talk about it as well, don't you? He saw you as another hiker, I presume.
Absolutely. I think, I mean, obviously on the phone, that was what it was. When I said, I'm getting ready to start a through hike, I'd like to ask Bill some questions. I think Bill must have told him, like, hey, when people want to call and book me, that's your job. But if someone is interested in doing a through hike and they're interested in talking to me, then I'll take those calls. So, so I think that, it was just the fact that I was getting ready to through hike, that he took it, and then we became friends little by little after that. So I got to meet him in Burlington, and then he ended up moving to Sebec, Maine, and I visited him up there.
Nice.
So.
And I'm sure he must have shared some insights into his own hike. Did he teach you much?
He gave me a lot of advice. Unfortunately, I didn't take all of it. He told
Once
me
again, 22-year-old kid. Why would you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he told me that going southbound was going to be tough. He told me about the black flies and why most people, didn't do that because of the weather conditions, all the streams up there.
Sure.
There's not a lot of footbridges, as you know, in Maine. So a lot of those, small creeks and things that you can just kind of hop over and barely get your feet wet in late fall, they're raging and it's cold, but he tried to warn me, and so I would say I took some of the advice that he gave me, but he definitely did not recommend me going southbound. So. There
you go. So and in fact, I mentioned the picture of your Katahdin picture, which is epic, as I say. The other one and I may be wrong here, was that you crossing the Kennebec?
Yes,
because there wasn't a canoe. There wasn't a canoe then, was there?
There was, but it wasn't mandatory. So I was right there. I think a few years after I hiked, maybe someone else had drowned, and then eventually, to officially do it now, the canoe. So I tell people I have crossed the Kennebec just about every way possible, because back when I crossed, so the guy I was hiking with from Germany for a short period of time, he was there, and I had always seen pictures, heard people crossing. I wanted to cross with my pack and do it kind of the old-fashioned way, but I didn't want to take the chance with my dog. Right. If I did something stupid, it was on me, but I didn't want to endanger my dog. So I literally crossed with my pack. And then I left my pack on the other side. The river raised probably a foot or so in that time that I got across. So I understand why that's not the official route anymore.
Right,
I swam back without my pack, and then I crossed with my dog and the guy from Germany with the canoe and the official route. So I tell people I crossed it about every way you can. And the canoe's the easiest by far.
So how much of the trail did you do with your dog then, Will?
I hiked with him. So after I hiked Katahdin, I got him from my parents, and then we hiked together through, I guess it was almost all the way through New Hampshire. So, not quite a fourth of the trail. So
you gave the dog the tough bit, though, didn't you?
Yeah, he definitely. He didn't. He certainly was a dog. Not every dog can do the trail. He did well as far as the mileage, for sure.
So I wonder whether it was the dog connection then, because I'm so interested that Bill took this young man under his wing, because he then led you in another direction in your life, didn't he? So tell us about that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Part of the reason I called him is I wanted to talk to him about, hiking the trail with a dog, and what food he had and the packs he used and things like that. So, it was through a friendship. My degree was in wildlife and fishery management, but through meeting Bill Irwin, and when I got off the trail, met him, we hiked together. I had done some short-term work with the Nature Conservancy down in Columbus, Georgia, but it was a part small. I knew 6 months when my time was up with them. Sure. But Bill was actually going back to retire Orient and get another dog. So he kept Orient as a pet. But when he went back, he contacted me from class and said, I hear through the grapevine that they're getting ready to hire 2 apprentices at the CNI in Morristown, New Jersey. That's where he got his dog. And so, I ask him a lot of questions about the dogs. How do they train them to do this? How do they train them to do that? How long does it take them to train? How much are they? I mean, again, I'm a 22-year-old kid that just won't stop. And so he actually, I think, he knew that I was looking for a career. And when he heard that they were getting ready to hire 2 apprentices, he called me that night from class and he said, hey, I heard through the grapevine that they're getting ready to hire 2 apprentices. I could probably put a good word in for you if you're interested, maybe get an interview, but I wanted to to check in. Would you be willing to come up here for an interview? And I said, yes, I'll gladly do that. I'd love to learn more about it. And, he got me the interview, and I ended up getting the job. And that was, I started in May of 1996, and I'm still working in the industry. So
that's amazing.
I've worked at a couple different schools. After the CNI, I work for Guide Dogs for the Blind on the West Coast now, and I'm a field service manager for the East Coast. So yeah, I'm still in the same business. And when you look back at it, it was all in meeting Bill Irwin and learning his story and asking a lot of questions that kind of changed.
You worked with a couple of his dogs, didn't you?
I did. I haven't trained any of his dogs, but I went to see him on follow-up visits, and the last time I saw him was up in Quebec, Maine, and he and his wife were building a nice home in Quebec. You could actually see from their home. They were not able to finish it, unfortunately, before he passed, but you could actually see Mount Katahdin from the top where he was building a home.
How beautiful. So some people, you've worked with dogs now for 25, more than 25 years.
26,
so
yeah.
What do you think about people taking dogs on the trail?
It's tough. I mean, we don't train our dogs to necessarily hike or certainly not through hike. We train the dogs to stop for elevation changes, to stop at the end of end of the block, to take someone around, things that might
sure.
people might bump into. So hiking with dogs, normally the dogs really enjoy short hikes. It's away from traffic, and that's a very can be where they feel stress is keeping people safe. So a lot of our clients will hike with their dogs. Very few actually do through hike, and that's something that it's kind of on the client to build the dog's stamina, and that's kind of on their end. Actually, one of our clients has, I think he's been on your show, Trevor Thomas. He's done several through hikes, yes. And then I have another one of my clients now that's planning on doing a through hike with her dog, but they put in a lot of work.
And is she completely blind?
She might have a little vision, but yeah, she's.
I've got fantastic vision. I kept falling over all the bloody time. It's a nightmare for me. So how anybody does it with limited vision, I have no idea at all.
Right, yeah. But that's something that we don't actually train the dogs to do anything like a through hike. So it's literally hours of time on their part, and not every dog can do it, and that's the important thing is even I tell people that, I talk to that want to take their dogs on a through hike. Not every dog is cut out for a through hike, even as a pet dog. And, with more and more people on the trail, then you have to be more concerned about making sure that the dog doesn't, damage their equipment or bother them. You don't want having a dog there to be a nuisance for other folks enjoying their time.
It's a fraught subject for a lot of people, I know.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm not a dog person myself, but for those who are, I know they love to have their dog with them. I think it's such a major responsibility, to be honest with you. But as long as you realise, or one realises, it's your dog's hike, not yours, then that things should be better. But look, I'm so glad a listener wrote to us about you coming on the show, because you've got such a fascinating story, and I love the fact that, and then when you sent me these photographs, I thought, oh my gosh, he's just done a different hike to any of us. This is just remarkable, and the fact that you stayed on with it, good for you, man, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, no problem. I appreciate you having me, and it's been great.
Cool. Appreciate it. Speak to you soon, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.
What a nice fella, eh? He introduced us to an earlier time of through hiking the trail, much like that book that I read by Larry Luxemburg last year. And going sober fairly early in the year, not seeing anybody in the 100-mile wilderness. I'm not sure I could do that. In fact, I couldn't do that. The trail for me will always be about the people I met and who touched my life in a way that I'm sure they didn't appreciate at the time, and nor did I probably. And yet with the benefit of a few years, they know that they're in my heart and always will be for the time we spent out there together. Will's journey was far different than mine, yet it just demonstrates that there really is no single way to do this. You do your hike exactly how you want to do your hike. And by the way, don't miss out on a couple of Will's pictures. They are very special, even though they are photos of his photos. They'll be in the show notes on our hikingradionetwork.com website. And believe me, they are epic. And now, totally coincidentally, our newest member of the class of 2022, Dan Whitesides, or Trumpet, will be hiking the AT this year with his dog, Frankie. Let's meet Dan. So today, our guest is a guy with a great trail name. His name's Dan Whitesides, or Trumpet. Hello, Trumpet. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
Yeah, we need to get that one out of the way. Why?
So yeah, well, I've technically got 3 trail names, but that was the first one.
Yeah, go with them. Whatever the other ones are, go with them.
Okay. Well, it's because I normally eat really healthy and bland. And then when I started the Colorado Trail, I started eating, like most hikers, like, Swedish fish and Pop-Tarts for every meal. And my body kind of gave me a lot of flatulence in that. And so the first hostel I stayed at,
excellent.
The super there, who was really cool, he was like, man, you sound like a trumpet in a middle school marching band. And I thought that was pretty funny. So I stuck with it.
And you're going to treat everybody to your trumpeting when you're on the AT this year. So,
I mean,
first off, when are you planning to start the AT?
April 3rd is the current start date. I've already started putting all the resupply packages together, ordering a bulk amount of dog food, all that stuff.
Yeah, you should fill us in on that. So who are you going with? There's a bit of a clue in that you're putting a lot of dog food together. To tell us about the dog, because I've just seen him on the video.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm starting with one of my friends from high school, actually. Wasn't planning to, but he's in the Coast Guard and he's going to take some leave. He's going to join me for like 3 weeks. And then It's just me, which I really don't mind. I'm sure I'll meet plenty of people on the AT.
No, whoa. No, your dog.
Oh, well, of course.
So you didn't even mention the dog, yeah. Frankie the dog.
Yeah, Frankie is they told me a Siberian Husky mix when I got him from the shelter. I think he's mixed with a white German Shepherd. He's like 60 pounds and he's got a really finicky stomach. So when we do these hikes, I buy special dehydrated food for him from Honest Kitchen and package that into bags, put those bags into boxes and ship them because he has his own backpack where he carries most of his food.
Does he really? Good for him. Well,
Yeah.
Good for you, actually. So what was it like hiking the Colorado Trail with Frankie? Was that fun?
It was like difficult in a lot of ways because I got him in March and we hiked in July and he is 4 years old. So we had to do a lot of training. Thankfully, he doesn't have a very high prey drive, but it was amazing. Everybody loved seeing Frankie. They were super happy to see a dog who was big and fluffy and friendly. And it definitely was nice that, if you wake up in a tent at 3 a.m. and you're in the mountains listening for things that go bump in the night, you have a little slumbering puppy next to you and you're like, oh, okay, everything's fine. I'm fine.
Yeah. So are you worried about him at all going over 2,200 miles or are you quite relaxed you can do that?
I mean, honestly, he would have done the Colorado Trail 2 weeks before I did if I let him. He's so strong. I've never, the one day he was tired on the Colorado Trail was the day we did 23 miles. So we're just going to take our time. I have a rescue harness in my backpack just in case.
Right.
I'm from the East Coast, so I know a lot of people along the way if I, have an emergency. But I mean, I have never met a dog this strong and just so happy to be a dog, just to dig, be in the dirt, run around.
All dogs are happy to be dogs.
Yeah.
All dogs are happy to be dogs.
Of course, yeah. He likes pets, he likes people, but he doesn't really care for them. All he wants to do is be outside running around, and that's why I think he's going to do great.
So we've covered your hiking experience. You've done the Colorado Trail, so you feel fairly comfortable with how you hike. So when did you do that, by the way?
I started July 17th, and I finished.
In 2021 that was it?
Yeah. This like a couple months ago.
So do you feel the need to prepare physically for the AT, or are you just carrying on any fitness that you had before?
I mean, I definitely should do more, but the fact is I'm trying to work full time so I can afford to do the AT. You know, the biggest thing I learned is that because when I did the CT, I had broken both of my wrists that year, a year before.
Oh, God.
And I only got surgery to fix them in January. So after like months of physical therapy, I was finally at a point where I could be normal again. And then I was just like, all right, I'll hike 500 miles now. You know, I think it's just going to take time. I'm just going to start real slow, enjoy myself, slowly build up to it. And even with all the horrible gear choices I made on the CT, I was still busting out 20s by the end of it. So I'm pretty confident I'll do fine.
And how old are you, by the way? I haven't already asked you this. You look much younger than I imagined you were, actually.
Really?
How old are you?
I just turned 24 like a week ago.
Yeah, you look slightly younger than that. So we won't go any further.
I'll take it as a compliment.
And you've obviously read about the AT and you've done some research and so on. And the physicality, I'm sure there's not a problem. It's not a problem for most people once they actually get out there. But what about the mental approach? Did you find you had bad days on the CT as well, and you had to sort of get your mind right on that as well?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my 100%. There was some day that a storm chased me for 10 miles and I didn't eat all day. And I had to like force down chips at the end of the night and threw up. It was a horrible day. But the main reason that, at least I think that I know I'm going to finish it, like the way I knew I was going to finish the CT, even though I got sick for 9 days right in the middle of it, because the worst day of hiking is better than the best day of work for me. I'd rather get rained on, have my tent break, have my dog bite me, have everything go wrong, and sleep outside than have the best day at a normal job. It's not for me, and I'd rather be in the mountains.
Oh, I'll tell you what, man, I'm so looking forward to catching up with you when you actually get on the trail and seeing if you still want to say exactly the same thing. But we'll hold you to that one. So enough. You say you're working a job right now to try to raise the money. Do you think you've got enough money? Are you having to ration what you actually take? Because the cost of a dog on a trail is quite expensive, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I also just got his new backpack. I really love it. It's from Groundbird Gear. It's like custom made dog backpack and everything. Super light, very expensive. But my thing is that I try to live very cheaply. I rent out a small room in some guy's house. I don't go out to eat. And the job I have, I'm a bud tender. So I make pretty decent money, at least for what I do. And sure. I just try to spend as little as possible.
On the trail, trust me, you go into town, it's like hemorrhaging money. So be careful how often you go out the trail. You know, I mean, I know what it's like, and you know, there's, and I know people have heard me say this before. I'm going to say it again. They say that when you're going to hike the AT, you put all the money you're going to take on the table or on the bed or whatever, and all the gear you're going to take. And the idea is to take half the gear and twice the money, because that's what you need. So don't worry about that. So your equipment was dialed in, I guess, with the Colorado Trail. Have you made any changes to your gear since the Colorado Trail then? Because you say you made some mistakes on that. I've made an
insane amount. Yeah, I got a new backpack. I got a whole new set of rain gear, a new sleeping thing, sleeping bag liner. I made a lot of bad choices on the Colorado Trail that I just kind of sucked it up.
That's how you learn anything, isn't it? You make mistakes, don't do it again. So that should be easy enough. And do you have family supporting you on this trip? Are they going to send you packages or you know, what do your family think of you doing this?
My family kind of thinks I'm crazy, which they've now come to terms that I'm crazy, which I'm cool with. And they are going to be sending my boxes. I'm from Georgia, so my mom's just going to drive me right to the trailhead. Yeah. And I'm going to drive from Colorado with all my boxes. So they'll ship them to me as I go. And then as a surprise, my mom wants to join me for like 3 days, which is something my family does not do. Our version of camping is the Holiday Inn. So like I'm very much the black sheep. So that'll be cool. And then hopefully my grandma who lives in Connecticut, I'll be able to stop off and see her.
Nice. That's real nice. So we can already tell that you're pretty confident you're going to do this. Your expectations are that you will finish. Would it be devastating if you didn't make it?
Not really. I mean, that's the thing. If I break a leg, if Frankie breaks a leg and we need to take time off, then we'll do that. But God, there's nothing else I'd rather do.
And would you do it though, if your dog was injured, would you leave the trail as well? Would you carry on and let somebody else look after your dog?
I guess it depends how long he'd be injured for. If it was like 3 weeks, I would wait 3 weeks. If it's more than that,
sure.
Maybe. Frankie's just a lot to handle, and I don't really want to put that burden on anybody else.
And that's fair enough. I think that's the important thing, because it is your dog's hike now. When you take your dog, it is his hike now, so you need to make sure he's okay, I'm sure. So what are you most looking forward to out on the trail? What's the big thing? You've read all this stuff, you've seen all the videos, you've seen the fantastic views and so on. Mm-hmm. What are you looking forward to?
I don't know. I definitely am excited for Pennsylvania because I went to school in Allentown, right next to the AT, and that's where I got. First person who's
ever said that ever in the history of the world. But
I know.
I'm excited about Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Well, I went to school in Allentown, and it was a good spot to go hiking. And one day I was just out hiking, and I was like, man, I got to turn around and go back to my dorm, and I got to go get dinner. And I was like, I wish I could just keep going forever, and I can. So Pennsylvania and Maine, I'm excited for.
Yeah, Maine is New Hampshire and Maine. This is the greatest finish there really is. Mm. And now that's the things you're looking forward to. What are you least looking forward to?
The rain. That's the main reason I didn't want to do the AT. It's the gosh darn rain. The reason I live in Colorado is because there's 300 days of sunshine here. Yeah. But I bought rain gloves, rain kilt, rain jacket, and umbrella. And I met this woman on the CT, this like absolutely delightful older woman who told me about her experience on the AT, said it was so much fun, said she loved it, didn't have that much rain. And I was like, all right, it sounds great.
It is great. Yeah, trust me. Having done it myself, you're going to love it. Mm-hmm. Well, look, all I ask of you is if as the few weeks go on, you're still not going to April the 3rd, you say?
Mm-hmm.
April 3rd. I'd like you to, if you can, just text me if something comes up. You've got a story to tell or something, even in just your preparation or a shakedown hike or something like that. And when you're out on the trail, we'll just keep in contact with you. We'll speak to you every 2 or 3 or 4 weeks or something like that, because we've got a group of about 8 or 9 people out there. We'd like to see how they progress up the trail. So I thank you for coming on the show, and we'll speak soon. Okay.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Okay, man. Take it easy. Bye.
You too.
Man, knowing that you can do this hike before you've stepped through the arch is a confidence I don't believe I've ever had. And I've said this before about younger people on the trail, I love that confidence. I still think that hiking with a dog makes a mammoth task even more, mammother, if there's a word. But Trumpet seems to have it in hand right now. I'm looking forward to following his and Frankie's progress as they hit the trail in April. Thanks this week, as ever, go to our donors. The beginning of every month is always an expensive time to be a podcaster, so I'm always grateful to see that our funds have survived another month's bills. Thanks this week go to monthly donors Justin Mullins, Kevin Eastman, who kindly increased his donation this week, Ann Dobson, Terry Hackler and Mike DiCello, while Laura Saunders gave a very generous donation as well. Thanks go to all of you. Now, as a bit of a bonus, I brought Chris Casado from the TSX Challenge to tell us about a new initiative that he's putting together. I'll let him explain it to you all, but I hope you listen closely because he's looking for partners to help him get into schools and organisations for this very worthy programme. Here's Chris. So today we've got a little bit of extra conversation here. This is with Chris Casado, who's a guest a few weeks ago from the TSX Challenge, which I'm going to be taking part in this year. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Hey, good morning, Steve.
Well, it's 9 o'clock in the morning over here, so it must be very early where you are.
We're early risers over here.
All right, you need to be, yeah. So, and I saw something on Facebook the other day about the TSX Challenge and what you guys are doing and putting together right now. So tell us about that, because I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, so when I first started TSX 10, 11 years ago, my initial thought and goal was to find ways to get more young people out there. And we've had the number of young people on our trips over the number of years, but I've always wanted to kind of take it to the next level and make a kind of a dedicated, focused educational program. And so this past week or so, we just released something new for 2022, where we're going to have a couple of dedicated programs targeting just for next generation environmental education for youth, ages 13 to 17. And this is for people who want a little bit of a different experience, not your typical summer camp or just backpacking experience, but some people who know they're a little bit more interested in both science and the outdoors, and putting those two interests together into one program that could both instill confidence and also kind of build up foundational skill sets to help propel future pursuits in these areas as they continue to develop.
So what would that look like? I mean, how is that going to be if you're a 13 or 14-year-old kid thinking, well, that sounds interesting. Yeah. What will happen in those days?
So we have two programs. One program is going to be kind of a youth leadership program, and the other program is more of an environmental studies program. And so that environmental studies program is actually going to be on the same route that you're going to be taking across the Sierra to Mount Whitney. And we're going to be layering on a little bit extra work, though. So while you're going to be resting, they're actually going to be working a little bit more.
There'll be a lot of resting.
Yeah. It's going to be a little bit more hands-on. We have a dedicated environmental instructor. So a teacher, high school teacher. He's been teaching environmental studies, biology, chemistry at a high school level for the last 10 or 15 years. He'll be the main leader for this trip. There'll be hands-on work in terms of soil sampling, water sampling, looking at a walking transect, looking at the different flora and fauna that are going to be encompassing as you're transitioning from different elevations over the course of the trip. And also looking at different aspects of land management issues in the Sierra. You know, there's conflicting, lots of natural resources out there, and how do these resources play with interaction with human society? How do you manage use, overuse in certain areas, especially as you approach the Whitney zone? Looking at some past historical information in terms of reports that were provided by the Mount Whitney Crabtree Ranger Station. In addition, some of the history of the trails and history of exploration. So having kind of an all-encompassing view of this amazing natural resource that we have, some of the challenges that are presented in this area, and also looking at some of the baselines for developing data sets for looking at long-term perspectives and how to manage this going forward.
That sounds to me like very much a turning of the circle, or completing the circle, doesn't it? Because you started as a youngster on the trail with your friends. So how does that feel for you to be doing this? That must be quite exciting.
I think it's pretty awesome. I think it's just, this has always been education first type experience for us. The person who introduced me to backpacking was a fifth grade teacher and educator. And so I think education's always been kind of ingrained with who we are, but more so leading by example by what we do and how we treat, our time and spend our time out there in the Sierra. This is just kind of taken to the next level, though. I think, there's a lot of so much interest and so much discussion and so much conflicting information sometimes that comes out around environmental studies and the environment and managing this amazing resource. Just putting our hat in the game and saying, we have a stake in this amazing resource, and how do we navigate this for the future?
Sure. So how does someone get involved in this? Are you reaching out to communities, or do you have different organizations that you're saying this is something that's offered? Because this ain't cheap, I suspect, is it, for people to do? So what does the logistics of this look like for people if they wanted to get involved?
So right now, individuals could join this trip, and right now it's about 20% higher than our current trips, comparable trips like this, and that's really just a function of additional costs that go into running something like this. In my opinion, it's still too expensive. I'm looking for ways to kind of bring this price point down, and we're heavily focused on that right now, this next month or two. Long term, my vision is to really partner with school districts, clubs, organizations, people that have groups of young people, and find ways to integrate this into a more dedicated curriculum, a summer program with them and their experiences.
Well, that's where I think hopefully this show and you being on this show will come in, and we reach a bunch of people who do get involved, obviously. And if so, we're kind of asking, and I had no notes for this because I just came in for a quick walk. It seems to me we've got a good platform for getting people who may be involved or may be able to have children getting involved in this, and school teachers and so on, to contact you directly. Is that the plan?
Absolutely. You can reach out to me directly, and or anyone on our team, and we're looking for ways to kind of connect both students, interested teachers, or science teachers in particular who might have an interest in participating in something like this, or districts and community groups that might want to bring this to their community or bring similar experiences like this to their community.
And how many of these will you be doing this year? And what's the plan going forward in terms of how many will we do next year?
So this year we just plan on doing 2 trips. Pretty simple, just making sure we can kind of get there. We had kind of one pilot trip last year with this more focused education program. We're going to do 2 trips this year. Next year we'd like to do many more. And really that's just a function of who we can start making connections with and what we can start setting up. So we're actually planning at this moment for 2023. And our hope is over the next 4 to 6 months of building a group or a roster of groups of individuals that would want to help out participate that, so we can kind of grow this into the next year. And our hope is in the next 3 to 5 years to really make a bigger impact.
Okay. You now know what it is. So anybody out there who's interested in this, either you can contact me if you like, but Chris, you better share your email. And I'll put it in the show notes anyway. So
Sure.
Share your email.
It's pretty simple. Chris@tsxchallenge.com.
That helps. So, right. Well, look, thanks for coming on. I think it's exciting. I think the opportunity to get out there. I remember when I was a kid at school, we went to a local park once to see the ruins of an old priory. That was the extent of our field trip in our own town. So the fact that you'd be taking kids over mountains to have a proper science lesson, that just should fire the imagination for everybody out there. So I appreciate you coming on and talking to us about it.
I appreciate having me. Thanks so much, Steve.
Thank you, buddy. Take it easy. Bye.
All right.
Now, that's what I call a field trip. What an adventure for a youngster, and what values it's going to give him or her. I feel that we have a sufficiently wide platform here to be able to send a few people Chris's way. So, if you're a school teacher, especially a science teacher, or a principal who can make this happen, I really hope you reach out to Chris at tsxchallenge.com and introduce the next generation of hikers, leaders, and environmentalists to Chris. Of course, you can always write to me at steve@hikingradionetwork.com and I'll make sure it gets to Chris. I've also put a link in the show notes to give you some more information about the TSX Next Gen Education. It's exciting and I hope it gains some real traction. Finally today, we're back with another Class of 2022 member, Dom Tammaro. Dom was on a few weeks ago and as you'll hear, he is so looking forward to getting started. Here's Dom. So, I'm on this week with Dom Tammaro. Funny enough, Dom recently sent me a picture of one of our previous guests, Yalla, Jess Jordan or Yalla. Hey, Dom, how are you?
Good. How are you, Steve?
I'm good. So, and I knew she was going to Brown, and you said in the email that with the picture, which was great to see her, by the way, you said that you remembered listening to the show and taking note that she was going to Brown.
Yeah, I remember, I've listened, I caught up on all your episodes, and I remember listening. I was in my basement. I was doing some work on some kitchen cabinets, and when I heard her interview, and then I heard that she was going to be a medical student at Brown, which is where I work. I'm on the faculty here. Yeah. And as I was preparing, I met with another medical student who had already hiked. He's a senior. Right. And I asked him about Jess, who is a second-year student, which means she hasn't come into my area of work yet. So I never met her. Right. So I emailed her, and we arranged to meet, and she gave me some good advice.
She's an enthusiastic woman, isn't she? Oh, my gosh. She was so she's such a positive influence, I think.
Oh, she was. And she was so excited to talk about someone who was about to go. And I think we fed off each other's excitement.
Yes, I'm sure. And you sent an email that you're almost fully dialed in with your gear. But yep. You say your base weight for spring is 24 pounds, and you're hoping to get that down a little further. How much more can you lose?
Yeah. Well, I'm down to 23 pounds. As a physician, I brought a pretty big first aid kit.
Of course you did. Yeah.
I didn't want someone to get hurt and then look to me, and I got a little baggie with a couple of Band-Aids in it. I figured that wouldn't work. So, yes. But I was able to pare back that a bit. I also have, I think I have too many clothes. I think I'm more worried about the cold. I have a puffy jacket, but then I also have a lighter weight puffy jacket for hiking, and I don't know if I need two.
Well, do you know what, Dom? You can always send stuff home. The problem is if you haven't got enough, you can't you can't put something on that you haven't got. So it's not a bad thing sometimes to have a little bit more to make sure you are warm. And if you get too hot, that's okay. You can then send that home. And the other thing,
that's exactly what Jess said.
Good. Well, the other thing that I noticed, and I'd never heard of this before, you've got a non-attack bear's ears pack designed for use with bear cans. What made you decide you wanted to use a bear canister?
I talked to Jess about this. I know myself, and I think it's important to hang your food. I think it's important to protect wildlife, and I don't want the rodents or anybody else getting into my food.
Sure.
And I know that when I get into camp, especially early, it's going to be probably getting dark, and I'm going to be hungry. So once I eat, it's going to get even darker. And
Yes.
the last thing you want me is to have me throwing rocks at night. Someone's going to get hurt.
Good point. That makes a lot of sense. I must admit, setting up your tent in the dark's a nightmare. Getting your food sorted out is a nightmare in the dark. So you need to try to do as many of those things when it's still light as you can. So this pack is designed specifically for use with bear cans, is it?
Yeah, if you think back to a lot of the old canvas packs that the Boy Scouts used, the external frame packs,
sure.
The pack would sit high on the frame, and then there'd be about a foot of frame below it,
yeah,
where you would fasten your sleeping bag,
right,
which at that time would weigh 6 pounds. That's sort of the shape of the bear's ears. It's a lightweight pack. The bottom, though, is scooped out, and the bear can travels. It gets strapped onto the bottom of the pack and the back of the hip belt. And so when you put the hip belt on, the bear can presses into your back. It's like a lumbar support in a car. It's actually very comfortable.
Interesting. I'd like to see a picture of that at some stage when you get the chance. You can put it on. You send me a picture, and I'll put in the show notes. I've not seen that, and I've not seen how that works. So I'd love to see that.
Oh no, it's great. One of the benefits of going Noonatak is like a cottage shop. I was interested in it. I wasn't happy that it didn't have hip belt pockets, because when I pack, I use those a lot.
Sure.
So I sent an email to the Jan, who is either the owner or one of the people who make them, and he said, "Well, if that's going to be a deal breaker, I'll pay for a couple of optional shoulder pouches, and I'll fabricate them."
Nice.
And so I have this pack, and these hip belt pockets look like they were always meant to be there. It's so cool. So well done.
That is so good. Please send me a picture. I'd like to put that in the show notes. That'd be pretty cool.
I will.
And
I will.
And you also mentioned about you be doing some meal dehydrating over February, prepping and so on.
Yep.
And why have you decided you need to do this, or you don't want to get resupply from the trail? You do want to be resupplied proper food from home?
Yeah, I'm going to split the difference. I'm probably going to get a box mailed to me, not on a rigid schedule, but maybe every couple of weeks,
right.
And I'll have a few days worth of food in the boxes that we've put together, my wife Kay and I, and then when I run out of that, I'll go into town and I'll resupply from town.
And Snickers and ramen noodles.
Right.
Which most
Together.
people do, yeah. Happy days. So, and the reason I wanted to have you on was the other thing you said right at the very end. You are working with members of the Brown Child Psychiatry Department to raise money on your hike. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so, I work in a hospital, and we've had an incredible experience with COVID. Everybody's been working hard.
Sure.
And as we're emerging from the worst of it, I'm hearing from a lot of teachers and mental health professionals that the kids who have been at home, not in school, not socializing, and that's not a dig against
of course.
Having everybody at home. That's what we needed to do.
Yeah.
But the downstream effects of having the kids not exposed to the social environment in school has resulted in a big increase in depression and anxiety. The suicide rate is going up amongst children, adolescents, and young adults. And I feel like this is something that we're probably going to be dealing with the downstream effects for a while.
I'm sure it is. In fact, you say that COVID's created such a wave of mental health needs, it's jarring. And that's the expression the Brits use a lot. Something that is jarring. It's pretty darn bad. Is this something, is this something that's, so you're going to try to raise money for the treatment of that or research? I mean, what are you actually trying to raise money for?
So there's not enough mental health professionals in general.
Yeah, that's true.
And since I'm involved in medical education, my thoughts go to expanding capacity and access for kids by expanding the training of people who can help them.
Okay, cool.
And so we're working to try to come up with a plan so that anyone who donates, this will go to helping train physicians in training or mental health professionals in training to specifically deal with some of these post-COVID issues.
Sure. Well, when you get that sorted out and you've got a link where people might want to donate, because some people come up, they support certain people because they do certain things. So let me have that link when you're ready with it, and I'll add it to the show notes as well. But
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Coming back to your hike for a second, how excited are you getting now?
I'm crawling out of my skin. All it takes at work is something even tangentially related to my trip. And I start going off and talking to people about it. And we're in a busy time of my work because I have to maintain some focus. But just as I'm talking to you here, I'm wearing a pair of hiking boots because I want to break them in. And today I wore...
That's a good look.
Yeah. Well, the people I work with all know about it. A lot more people know about it than I was anticipating. I thought I was just going to be able to kind of, all right, see you later. I'm going for a hike.
Yeah.
Now everyone knows about it, which puts on the pressure.
Well, you should try not washing for 5 days. That bring it to their attention as well. Oh dear! I can feel your excitement. It is contagious, and once again, I look forward to following you on the trip. But look, thanks for catching up. When you're ready with that link where you've got worked out how you want people to donate, I'll put it in the show notes and we'll take it from there. Okay.
I will. That'd be great. And I'll send you a picture of the pack and the bear.
Yeah, please do. Okay, man. We'll take it easy. We'll catch up again soon, all right?
Thanks a lot, Steve.
Cheers, then. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
I guess you expect the faculty at such vaunted schools as Brown to be a little remote, reserved. But Dom ain't hiding it, is he? He's like a big kid, ready to go right now and doesn't care who knows about it. The fact that he's looking to support children through his hike is another reason to be glad that he's part of our 2022 class. Things are starting to warm up for the season, and I'm so looking forward to hearing first impressions when the majority of our team get on the trail. With Dave Burge last week already in Hot Springs, we're going to have such a wide variety of hikes to eavesdrop upon. I can't wait. I'll see you next week.